Who's your favorite Beatle?
Well, when I was a kid, I loved Paul most of all, but as I've grown older, I appreciate John more.
Okay, let's see how much you know. I'm going to quiz
Oh,
you.
boy.
And for you listening at home, I invite you to play along with us. Keep a tally of your own score as we jump straight into the first question.
Let's do it.
So his parents actually gave him a very famous middle name at birth. Were they honoring Winston Churchill, Winston Smith, George Washington, or Woodrow Wilson?
Well, given the intense timing of his birthright during World War II, they went with the British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill.
Spot on. John Winston Lennon.
Right.
It was a very patriotic nod to Churchill during a tense era for Britain. Now, question 2. Growing up in Liverpool at the house known as Mendips, who primarily raised him, was it his father Alfred, his Aunt Mimi Smith, his cousin Stanley Parks, or his mother Julia?
Oh, that would be his Aunt Mimi Smith. She was, sort of the anchor in his early life.
Exactly. His mother Julia was deemed unable to cope with the heavy demands of motherhood. So her sister Mimi stepped in and took full custody to provide that stability. But Mimi wasn't exactly thrilled with his early guitar playing.
No, she wasn't.
Did she prefer he play the mouth organ, think the guitar was too loud, worry he distracted from art school, or tell him he'd never make a living at it?
Oh, it's the classic worried parent trap. She told him he'd never make a living out of it.
She did. She hoped the novelty would just wear off.
Right.
Constantly warning him that a guitar wasn't a real career path. A slight miscalculation on her part, considering where he met his primary collaborator in July 1957.
Definitely.
So question 4. Did he first cross paths with Paul McCartney at 24th Lynn Road, a church garden fete in Woolton, the Cavern Club, or on a Liverpool bus?
They met at a church garden fete in Woolton. A surprisingly quaint start for, such a massive partnership.
Yeah, specifically at St. Peter's Church. The Quarrymen were playing their second set, and that chance encounter changed music history.
It really changed everything.
And they went from those small church fetes to stadiums so loud they couldn't even function. Which brings us to question 5. What was the primary reason for stopping touring entirely in 1966? A contract dispute, the inability to hear the music over screaming and threats, a desire to start the Plastic Ono Band, or Brian Epstein's death?
It was the sheer noise and the danger. They literally couldn't hear themselves play over the screaming fans.
Right, the live sound quality was atrocious by then. But it was also the intense backlash from his more popular than Jesus remark that made touring genuinely terrifying.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Speaking of that controversy, question 6. What exactly did he claim was more popular than Jesus in 1966? Rock and roll music, the Maharishi, the Beatles, or television and cinema?
He specifically said the Beatles were more popular.
Yes, he was trying to make a broader sociological point about the decline of Christianity's influence compared to the cultural obsession with rock music.
But it totally backfired.
It did. Around that same era, he took his only non-Beatles feature film role. Was it Yellow Submarine, How I Won the War, A Hard Day's Night, or the Rolling Stones' Rock and Roll Circus?
He played the character Gripweed in How I Won the War.
Correct. Richard Lester directed that anti-war black comedy, giving him a chance to step outside the band's polished identity.
Right.
Now, things got much more tense behind the scenes by 1969. Question 8. Who did he, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr appoint as Apple's chief executive against Paul McCartney's wishes? Phil Spector, Brian Epstein, Alan Klein, or Lord Beeching?
Oh, they brought in Alan Klein, which became a massive breaking point.
It caused a huge rift. Paul McCartney absolutely refused to sign that management contract, and that was the beginning of the end for the band.
Such a messy time.
Yeah. Also in 1969, question 9. He returned his MBE medal to the Queen. Was it over a drug conviction, the band's breakup, renouncing citizenship, or protesting Britain's involvement in the Nigerian Civil War and support for Vietnam?
It was a direct political protest against the Nigerian Civil War and the Vietnam War.
Spot on. He smartly leveraged that royal honor to guarantee front-page coverage for his anti-war stance against imperialism.
Wow.
Following the band's split, question 10, what therapeutic technique heavily influenced his 1970 solo debut? Primal therapy, transcendental meditation, hypnotherapy, or cognitive behavioral therapy?
That was primal therapy, guided by Unter Janov.
Janov's methods forced him to confront deep childhood pain. That psychological unearthing is exactly why that album features literal screaming and such raw intensity.
It's a very heavy album.
It is. Let's shift to his inspirations for question 11. What inspired the title Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds? Was it his son Julian's painting, LSD, Lewis Carroll, or Yoko Ono's art?
Despite all the psychedelic rumors, it was actually a painting by his son, Julian.
Right. Julian came home from nursery school with a drawing of his classmate Lucy. That innocent artwork supplied the entire magical imagery for the Sgt. Pepper album.
I love that story.
Moving to question 12. The famous Lost Weekend refers to what specific period? A residency in Hamburg, the Indian ashram, an 18-month separation from Yoko Ono spent with May Pang, or a 5-year hiatus?
That was the 18-month separation spent with May Pang out in Los Angeles.
Right, between 1973 and 1975. While it's culturally remembered for wild behavior, it was actually a highly productive period packed with musical collaborations.
Yeah, he did a lot of work then.
Which leads to question 13. One of those collaborations was the 1974 chart topper, Whatever Gets You Through the Night. Did he work with Mick Jagger, David Bowie, Elton John, or Harry Nilsson?
Elton John played on that track.
Yes, Elton provided piano and backing vocals. And a bet between them actually led to that legendary surprise appearance at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, that's right.
Question 14. Soon after, in 1975, Yoko Ono set a firm condition for continuing her pregnancy with Sean. Was it moving to England, adopting the role of house husband, securing U.S. residency, or ending former band partnerships?
She asked him to adopt the role of house husband.
He agreed to step away from the music industry entirely for 5 years. He baked bread, planned meals, and devoted himself to raising Sean.
A total shift in lifestyle.
Completely. Going back a bit to 1971, question 15. His song, How Do You Sleep, was a direct, brutal attack on who? Alan Klein, Paul McCartney, Richard Nixon, or Mark David Chapman?
That track was aimed squarely at Paul McCartney.
He felt that Paul McCartney's Ram album contained hidden jabs at him and Yoko, so he retaliated with some of those cutting lyrics of his career.
Very direct.
Yeah. Moving into his political struggles, question 16. The Nixon administration actively tried to deport him. What were their legal pretext? A 1968 cannabis conviction, visa violations, an LSD admission, or espionage?
They used his 1968 cannabis conviction from London.
Correct. It was politically motivated, but they weaponized that old misdemeanor charge to argue he was legally ineligible to remain in the U.S.
Just looking for any excuse, really.
Exactly. In response to those border struggles, question 17. He and Yoko Ono announced the formation of a conceptual state in 1973. Was it Strawberry Fields, Plastic Ono Kingdom, Newtopia, or Beigism?
That conceptual state was Newtopia, right?
Utopia was a conceptual country with no land, no boundaries, no passports, only people. It was an artistic response to his immigration fights.
That's so them.
Question 18. Let's talk about his early musical presence. What instrument provided his signature sound in those early recordings? The mellotron, the banjo, the sitar, or the harmonica?
He used the harmonica extensively in those early days.
He did. He picked up a professional mouth organ during their Hamburg era. It gave a driving energy to early hits like Love Me Do.
Oh, yeah, you can totally hear it.
Now, question 19. He was also writing off stage. What was the title of his 1964 book of nonsense writings? Grapefruit, Skywriting by Word of Mouth, in his own right, or The Daily Howl?
That was his book, in his own right.
It perfectly showcased his brilliant, surreal sense of wordplay. The book was a massive success.
Yeah, he was so creative.
Decades later, question 20. What event finally reinvigorated his creative muse to record Double Fantasy in 1980? Jimmy Carter's inauguration, a reunion track, a sailing trip to Bermuda, or a Grammy win?
The sailing trip to Bermuda sparked that major creative return.
He sailed through a terrifying storm. Facing that fear completely unblocked his writing, and he spent 3 weeks in Bermuda refining those tracks.
That is wild.
We're on the final 5. Question 21. Digging into his studio quirks, producer Jack Douglas noted he habitually tuned his D string slightly flat. Why? To imitate a banjo for a dissonant sound for his vocal range, or so Aunt Mimi could identify his guitar?
Oh, I love this detail. It was so Aunt Mimi could identify his guitar.
Even as a global superstar, he kept that subtle audio cue. It was a personal signature, so his skeptical guardian could always pick out his playing on the radio.
That is incredibly sweet.
It is. Now for something a bit more avant-garde. Question 22. In 1969, he appeared in Yoko Ono's 40-minute art film titled Self-Portrait. What was the single subject of this shot? His eyes, a bed in, his penis, or a white wall?
Oh my gosh. I definitely remember this one. It was his penis.
It sure was. It premiered at the Institute of Contemporary Arts as one continuous long shot, a very bold push against mainstream censorship.
Bold is one word for it.
Yeah. Question 23. That same year, He changed his name by deed poll. What was his exact resulting legal name? Winston Ono Lennon, John Winston Ono Lennon, John Yoko Lennon, or John Utopia Lennon?
He kept his first name, making it John Winston Ono Lennon.
He added Ono as a middle name to show his absolute unity with Yoko, though legally the Winston had to remain on his documents.
Right.
Question 24. As he evolved, his views shifted. Which 1971 protest song did he later disown, saying it was just to gain approval from radicals? Working Class Hero, Power to the People, Imagine, or Give Peace a Chance?
He ended up distancing himself from Power to the People.
He wrote it right after being interviewed by activist Tariq Ali, but later realized he was just pandering and felt it was completely inauthentic. And our final question, number 25. After his tragic death in 1980, where were his ashes scattered? Central Park, the Atlantic Ocean, the River Mersey, or St. Peter's Church?
Yoko scattered them in Central Park in New York City.
Right near their apartment at the Dakota. That exact spot is where the Strawberry Fields Memorial now stands today, serving as a quiet place of reflection.
A beautiful tribute.
Well, congratulations. You absolutely crushed that sprint through history. And for you listening, how did you score? Were you able to keep up with us?
That was an incredible journey to trace out in such a short amount of time. So much history.
It truly was. Before we sign off, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder. Consider how his journey, from that cheeky kid in Woolton to the devoted house husband in New York, reflects a lifelong search for identity beyond the fame.
Yeah.
Did his constant reinventions, from changing his name to forming Newtopia to altering his guitar tuning, ultimately make him more of a myth? Or did it make him more human? Something to explore on your own. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.